run an oil and gas podcast network, but my degree's in wildlife management. So for any young people that are listening, that's a perfect example of how you may try to plan your life, but the journey may bring you somewhere else. The world thinks our industry is destroying the planet. That's a big bias that's affecting our ability to recruit talent, to operate.
If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
It'd be a theme song from Mortal Kombat. That movie probably came out in the 90s. The oil and gas industry is not going anywhere. It is changing for the better and will continue to change. But even our future is intrinsically tied to hydrocarbons.
This is the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show, where we are going to invite industry leaders to talk about their journeys and also technologies of tomorrow, in an effort to break some of the biases that might have formed around this energy industry. Hello, everyone. I hope you are happy and healthy. I'm Anand Jha, and you are listening to the Oil and Gas Breaking Bias show. Today, I'm happy and excited because we are joined by Mark Lacour, an industry veteran with 25 years of experience. From selling over 300 millions into oil and gas industry to leading sales strategies around the world, he has worked across the North Sea, Gulf of Mexico, Middle East, and beyond. Now he is editor-in-chief of the Oil and Gas Global Network, the home of top oil and gas podcasts with millions of downloads worldwide. As an author, speaker, and board member, Mark is passionate about sharing industry stories and also shaping the future of next-generation energy leaders. And also, I would like to mention, he's inspired me to start my own podcast. So with that, let's deep dive into his leadership journey and also get his views on the biases that might exist in this energy industry. Mark, I'm very happy to have you here today.
You know I have to come on your show. Like, we just had to do this. We have such a history together, and I'm just very appreciative that you invite me on your show. It is weird to be on the other side of the microphone, though. I will tell you that much.
I know you are more used to interview people, and now you will get interviewed. So as I mentioned, Mark has a long history of working with oil and gas industry. He hosts multiple podcasts. So he has tons of knowledge that he gathered talking to different people and the leadership of oil and gas industry. So I don't want to waste any other minute. Mark, this stage is yours. Please walk us through your leadership journey, the journey of your podcast, the journey, how you have started in oil and gas and where you are today. And also talk about some of the biases that might exist in the industry or you have faced during your journey.
Man, my journey. So graduate high school in the early 80s. I'm from a little town called Zachary, Louisiana. Entered the Marine Corps. So I was in the Marine Corps for 4 years. And I know that I was not cold and wet the entire time I was there, but my memories of the Marine Corps was I was always cold and wet and being shot at. I was a radio operator. And so after my 4 years, I decided that was not a career for me. I went to university in Lafayette, Louisiana, and I have a degree in wildlife management. So think about that for a second. I run an oil and gas podcast network, but my degree's in wildlife management. So for any young people that are listening, that's a perfect example of how you may try to plan your life, but the journey may bring you somewhere else. After I got my degree in wildlife management, I was slapped in the face with reality. This was in the late 80s, and the only job I could get was with the wildlife and fisheries for $14,000 a year, which even then was not enough to live on. So I started applying for jobs in the newspaper. This was before the internet. You actually would look in the Sunday newspaper, and there was a job listing place. And I had this startup that looked promising, although I didn't know what they did. It was called Cellular One. And I ended up interviewing for the job and getting it. I still didn't know what the company did. And come to find out, they did something very novel, which was cell phones. Back then, it was the very beginning of the cellular phone craze. Cell phones were expensive. They only worked in certain parts of the country. They consumed so much power that you had to have them mounted in your car. There wasn't even bag phones yet, and there was no such thing as a portable cell phone. And that led me to go work for the local phone company in the East, which was Bell South. And they basically gave me all of their oil and gas accounts because no other salesperson in the company wanted to deal with Exxon and Chevron and Halliburton because they were a pain in the butt. And I just wanted the job. So I took it. I knew nothing about the oil and gas industry. In fact, my first meeting with anybody in the industry was with a Chevron procurement person in San Ramon. I flew out to California. I was in my suit, my red tie, and my briefcase. I walked in 30 minutes early, stuck my hand out and said, "Hi, I'm Mark Lacour. I'm your new Bell South rep." And my contact at Chevron looked up at me, did not shake my hand. And you may have to bleep this out because I don't know if your show's explicit or not. But he looked at me in the square in the eyes and said, "We have been paying tariff rates to your company for over 80 years. Why the should I even be talking to you right now?" That was my first oil and gas conversation.
That's funny. And then you must have felt really bad about this industry, how rude it is.
Then I got to know the industry and I let all my customers know that I would always put them first over even my own company. And they welcomed me in and on it. It was a wonderful thing. The first time I ever went offshore, I don't want to say the name of the service company, but it's one of the largest service companies in the world. I knew their Gulf Coast business unit leader, and I told him I had never been offshore. And he said, "Come meet me at the heliport on Wednesday." And just because I was with this service company, we flew offshore. You can't do that now. There's too many
Yes.
regulations and rules. But I got to see the moon pools and a mud pump and the cruise quarters, right? Same way my first refinery tour was with the Chevron Pascagoula Refinery, Mississippi. I knew the refinery manager and I said, "I don't know what a refinery does." He goes, "Let me show you." I spent 2 days there, him riding me around inside the refinery, explaining what refineries do. And it was a beautiful time. So I got to learn the industry from the ground up. And the best thing from a sales point of view is that I got to see the entire industry at the same time. So I didn't only grow up in upstream or in midstream or downstream. I saw it all. I saw how they all work together. This group gets it out of the ground. This group moves it. This group turns it into products. And these companies do all the work that the oil and gas industry doesn't want to do. And so it was a great way to learn the industry. And I wish more people had that experience now, that hands-on experience where you actually get to touch it and see it and learn from the experts themselves.
I can imagine. Just one thing you highlighted about this industry still in silos, like upstream, midstream, downstream. You already talked about. Sometimes we say we also put people in silos. Like
Yes.
you belong to this stream and all those things. But as you say, like it's good to have that knowledge overall, like about the industry itself. And also we will talk more about this transferability of skills. But please continue, Mark. Like I just want to highlight like how this industry is segmented into different streams.
Yeah, and you're right. It's still a problem. We are going to get to that later. One of the major things that happened to me at that part of my career was Hurricane Katrina. Your audience may not know this, but you can't operate a refinery or a pipeline without connectivity. The local phone companies provide that connectivity, at least back then. And when Katrina happened, all of our competitors, the AT&Ts and the Sprints and the MCIs, were dead because their infrastructure was built cheaply on telephone poles in the air, and the hurricane ripped all that stuff out. Because Bell South had operated for 100 years in Hurricane Alley, all of our infrastructure was in the ground in conduits, so we were still up and running. So we were the only communications connectivity partner that still was working. And Anand, you're gonna love this story. So my quota that year was $7 million. Because I was the only company that could still get connectivity, I did $59 million in revenue that year. And my sales manager the next year tried to change my quota from $7 million to $30 million. And I said, "No way, unless you can promise me there's another natural
And then
disaster." But during Katrina, I did stuff that broke company policy, that broke FCC law. New Orleans was flooded. The day New Orleans flooded, I was in a super major helicopter over New Orleans watching it flood. Our technicians were out there doing repairs. I pulled people. Now remember, Anand, I'm a frontline salesperson. I pulled people out of retirement. I had no authority to do that. I pulled some older guys out of retirement that understood microwaves. We did a microwave shot from our CO in downtown New Orleans and Pointers to the Exxon Chalmette refinery. We got that talking, and then I had them break into the AT&T cabinet, which broke FCC laws. We took that microwave connection and connected to some AT&T fiber, brought it back to Houston. All of a sudden, that refinery came back up and started producing fuel. And we did that over and over and over again. And my customers at that point quit being customers and became friends. And I became part of their team because it was all hands on deck. This wasn't about contracts and price. This was about getting services back up as quickly as possible. And that happened a very long time ago. To this day, I still benefit from those relationships that I
definitely.
formed during that time. And you know this about the oil and gas industry. When something bad happens, they want partners that will help them. They don't want your company, they want to know you. So if they pick up the phone and something bad happens, they want to know that you can help. And if you help, you're now on the inside, which is what happened to me, which is a great experience.
Definitely. So you already highlighted one thing about this. This industry looks big, but it's very close industry. People know each other, and you could be successful selling once, but if does not work, then that's the last day you might be selling to this industry. So it's a point for everyone. Like as you mentioned, Mark, like you stepped up when it was needed, and that's as industry wants. So when you step up, then that relationship goes forever. And as we talked about, Mark is serving this industry more than 2 decades, and he just mentioned about those relationship he has started multi decades ago. It still exists,
And
and that's
still
how it is.
beneficial. After Katrina, I did a startup. I think everybody has a startup under their belt. That was a learning experience because I just assumed that people would still talk to me because it was me, not my company. Well, if you're in sales, you know that that's wrong. If your customers don't know your company, they're not going to talk to you. When you work for a startup, you have no brand recognition.
Yes, yes,
Then I started my own company, my first company, Modal Point, which is a market research company focused on oil and gas, very successful. And back in 2011, my marketing person from Modal Point came to me and said, "Hey, we should start a podcast to promote Modal Point." And Anand, I looked at him and said, "That's the stupidest thing that's ever come out of your mouth. Nobody listens to podcasts." In my defense, in 2011, nobody was listening to podcasts.
definitely.
Apple had introduced a piece of hardware called an iPod, but everybody was using it for music, not
Yes, not
podcasts,
for
and the
podcasts.
podcast genre was dying. And for your audience member that have young children, you're going to relate to this. He literally asked me every day for 37 days. And on the 38th day, he just wore me down. And I said, okay, just so he would shut up and leave me alone. And what I didn't know is we started the first oil and gas podcast in the world. That's Oil and Gas This Week, which is now number one, has always been number one.
Yes.
And that's what led to this empire that I sit on now. Today, we have 30 different shows focused on the oil and gas space. We have 3 more we're working on now. We just opened a studio in Midland, Texas, for your audience that's in the heart of the Permian. So my story is funny because I thought the podcasting idea was stupid and I was wrong, right? And so here we are, both of us on a podcast, all from that little journey I just explained.
Oh, that's amazing, Mark, and I love it. Like where you have started as a marine, as a wildlife management. Your education was in wildlife management, and from there now you're running a podcast on oil and gas. But that journey is incredibly inspiring, I will say. Like, and it also tells like it doesn't matter where you start, your end goal could be anything different, but you have to work towards it. During that interesting journey, or during that journey, Mark, have you came across any stereotype and bias? Maybe the people look onto you, or maybe something about yourself.
Yeah, so there's been a bunch of biases. I want to talk about a couple biases that have disappeared because I'm very proud of my industry. When I first started this industry, the only women I saw were in the offices. They were administrative tasks. You fast forward to now, and there's women technicians, there's women engineers, there's women petroleum engineers, there's women out there on the rigs, on the pipelines, and I love it. In fact, I'll give you an interesting statistic. Of the new hires that Schlumberger made last year in North America, 52% were female. So they hired more females than males. I love that. So I've seen that bias disappear out of our industry.
That's
And
a
my
great
thoughts, like
change,
that.
actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're continuing to work on that. But we have some internal biases that have always struck me as kind of interesting. So if you get your start in a certain part of the industry, if you get your start in upstream, you think upstream oil and gas is the whole oil and gas industry. And if you need to look for another job, you never think about going to look in the pipeline part of our industry or the downstream, even though, like, if you're a project manager or accountant, your skill set would transfer just right over. And if you're working for a super major like BP or Exxon or Chevron, you probably could stay in your own company and just move to a different business unit in your own company. But they never think of that. And it's always bugged me. Right now there's a bunch of layoffs. We're recording this in September of 2025. And a lot of these people are being laid off. Their job skills transfer to other parts of the industry or different industries.
Yes.
But sometimes, Nod, they're scared to look, or they don't even think of it. So that's one of the internal biases I want to see go away. The other one that bothers me a lot that's starting to change is a lot of the world thinks our industry is destroying the planet. That's a
Yes.
big bias that's
Yes.
affecting our ability to recruit talent, to operate. And it's a lot of negative public perception, some of which, let's be honest here, some of which is justified and
Mm.
some of it is not. And I think as an industry, we need to own that. In the last 50 years, anytime somebody says something negative about our industry, whether it's accidental on purpose, we don't ever correct them. And I'm not talking about politics. I'm not talking about opinions. I'm talking about basic facts, such as 60% of the world is fed with fertilizer made from natural gas. Most people don't know that. That's an important fact that the world should know. But as an industry, we don't put that out there. So I challenge our own industry. If you're listening to this, get the facts out there. Explain what's going on. Quit letting other people's biases affect our business. We're the most important industry to mankind. And yes, we've had mistakes and we'll probably have mistakes in the future. And yes, we have emissions, but you know what? We can fix that. And we do. I'd put this industry against any other industry on the planet to do large, major capital expenditure projects that are global. Nobody does it as well as we do.
No.
And actually, ABB is another perfect example. I mean, literally, the stuff that ABB does in the world is stuff that's life changing, and yet people don't know it. So I challenge our own industry. Let's get rid of this bias that we're somehow negative for the planet, and let's show the positive things that we do.
And that's the purpose of this podcast and the podcast you host, to bring that positivity and the knowledge about, to spreading that knowledge about the industry. One thing I have realized, like there was one project in Canada on oil and gas, and I saw when it was going into approvals and all those things, then you see companies getting active. But when there's nothing is happening, then nobody knows about that company, what they are doing. So we need that consistency. Don't just wake up when there is something. But I think is a consistent effort you have to make to spread the positivity about industry. Otherwise, as you mentioned, especially new generation doesn't know how this industry is supporting almost everything, from whatever we do on our day to day life, to our clothes, like our cars. Everything runs on oil and gas industry.
Yeah. And it's our future. At some point, our sun will run out of hydrogen. It will go through something called a red dwarf stage and will literally burn the earth until it disappears. Now, that's way off in the future, but in order for us as a species to survive that, we can't out engineer that. We
No.
have to get off this planet. And the only fuel that has enough energy density to get us out of our gravity well is hydrocarbons. And the universe is full of hydrocarbons, both organic and inorganic hydrocarbons. It's a very natural fuel that's everywhere. And we're going to have to take advantage of that in the future if we want to survive as a species. So the oil and gas industry is not going anywhere. It is changing for the better and will continue to change. But even our future is intrinsically tied to hydrocarbons.
I can fully understand and fully support what you just said, Mark. And just continuing our discussion about the industry itself, as you said, this industry is not going anywhere. It's just transforming itself. Like, it's bringing new opportunity and challenges. But you, working very closely with oil and gas leadership around the world, if you have to quantify those opportunity challenges, like what would be those? And if somebody wants to make it big in this industry, what would be some of the recommendations?
So a couple things I've seen recently that I just love. This is an extremely competitive industry, like no other industry you've seen. And up until recently, a lot of companies held certain processes, certain engineering talents, certain buckets of data as super important to their business, and they didn't share it, and it was locked down. Now I'm seeing the industry cooperate across lines. I've seen competitors work together, and it's better for everybody. A nod, ExxonMobil's using open source software. I would have lost money on that 10 years ago. I would have said, no way ExxonMobil will ever use open source software, because they want everything to be theirs. So you're seeing the culture of the industry change geographically, culturally, across countries. All of a sudden you're seeing a lot of cooperation between the Middle Eastern companies and the European and the Western. And I love all of that. And we need more of that. So we're seeing that happen. But the other thing I think is amazing is there's Generation Z. So, I keep calling the millennials the new generation, but the oldest millennials now in their 40s. They're mid-level management. They're directors and VP. This younger generation that's just in college and universities, Generation Z, is amazing. And they're looking at our industry with open eyes. And so as an industry, we need to encourage these young people to come in our industry. This is a great industry to work in. I don't care if you want to be an accountant, or if you want to be a meteorologist, or if you want to be a data scientist. We want you. We have spaces for you, and we do really cool stuff. So I think the future of our industry is promising, but it's changing, and it's, quite frankly, it's needed to change for 25 years. And we're seeing new technology come in. Typically our industry is slow to adopt anything new because it's a risk, and we're a risk adverse industry. I would put AI adoption, I'd put oil and gas as the number one industry right now that's adopting AI. Now, there's reasons for that, but the fact that we're doing it so quick and we're making it valuable, and it's driving real business metrics, and it's making things safer, both for the people and the environment, is just wonderful. And once again, we just need more of that, and it's happening.
I can imagine it's a very, very interesting times in this industry. And also, you mentioned about that partnership between competitor, and also like that partnership is going beyond. I have seen like end user, EPC, vendor, they're working together to find the right solution,
Right.
and also they're not hesitate to open that solution for somebody else.
Yeah.
So I think that's very exciting times these days. Like it used to be more closed door kind of culture. Like nobody should know my secret. But I think industry is more open than what it used to be.
Yeah, and you mentioned EPCs. I'm seeing some amazing deals where the EPCs are opening their books to their customer, which is, the big super majors. And instead of having a lump price for this new refinery they need to build, the EPC is open and transparent. It goes, here's my margins. Like literally Exxon or Chevron, here's my margins. We want to keep it around 20%. And Exxon and Chevron's like, that's great. We'll make sure you make money because we want you to
Yes.
build a good facility for us.
Yes.
And so it's no longer vendor against buyer. Now it's partnerships happening. Now, there's still some of the the old stuff there, but
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love where this industry is going, where it's
Yes.
more about working together and helping everybody.
Yes, yes. And also one change, Mark, I like to mention here, the specs, like this industry had very high standard, and they had platinum specs for almost everything. Even they buy motor drives or anything that they buy. But now also they're going towards more and more industry specs. They are going more and more harmonizing different specs. They're
Yeah.
talking to each other to find the right balance. And I think that's good for everyone, like the cost will be low and the industry will be more and more competitive against any source of energy that we see in the world today.
And you're seeing us finally look outside our own industry. You remember this. You've been in this industry for a long time. It used to be if your product was not sold to an oil and gas company, no matter how good it was, they didn't even want to talk to you. And now all the major companies have their own their own venture capital groups.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so they're actually looking for this startups that are helping them.
Yes.
When I was younger, Exxon would not do business with a startup because it was a
Yes.
risk. Now they're encouraging and funding and helping startups. And so once again, if you're a young person and you have a great idea and you want to grow a company and exit, look at our industry. We have cash. We're looking for solutions, and it's a great partnership.
Nothing can be better than this time.
Yeah.
That's great, Mark. So continuing the theme of your journey, like, yeah, as we already talked about where you have started, where you came, but if you have given an opportunity to reflect your journey, what changes you might make?
Oh, what changes I might make? I would have gotten oil and gas quicker for sure. Uh, that's one thing. The other thing is I didn't recognize the power of working for a good company. So when I worked for the phone company, it had 100 years worth of name recognition. It had 100 years worth of internal processes and training. And some of that stuff when I worked there, Nod used to get in my way and I used to get aggravated at it. The one thing that bothered me the most is I would hear this all the time from my manager. Well, we've never done that before. And it would frustrate me. But now that I'm older and I look behind me, it's like it was so great to have a company that you had that type of support. A lot of stuff has disappeared, even in big companies, because it's cost prohibitive now. I remember my sales manager coming out with a printout and he hollered across the room, Lacour, which is me, you're not spending enough money on your customers. He literally was looking at my expense report and he had a minimum threshold. He wanted me to spend $1,000 a month on my customers building relationships. You don't see that anymore in sales
No,
organizations. You don't
no.
see sales leaders fussing at the frontline salespeople for not spending enough money on their customers because the world has changed. I wish I could go back and take advantage of more of that
Yes,
because that was a certain time in history where it was a beautiful thing.
definitely.
But the world has changed since then, and it's changed for the better, but if I look back, I wish I would have spent more time taking advantage of working in a big company and learning even more. It would have sped up it would have got me here quicker if I would have spent more time learning
Yes.
when I had the access to all those resources.
Sometimes we undervalue when you have access to something.
100%, yeah.
What about your podcast journey? So do you think like you could have started early?
No, no. In fact, we started really too early. So when we started, there was no broadband, so we couldn't do remote interviews like this. So if we wanted to do a remote interview, we had to fly somewhere and bring gear with us. The software to edit audio was expensive and hard to learn. Things like storage was prohibitively expensive. Microphones were expensive because there wasn't a volume in sales for podcasters because
Yes, correct.
nobody was podcasting. And even getting it out there was difficult and even downloading it. There was no apps. So if you wanted to listen to a podcast, you had to understand how to download an MP3 file. And the
Yes.
podcaster had to understand how to create an MP3 file, right? And so we actually started kind of early. On the podcast journey, the one thing I would have done differently is I would have gotten into video sooner. We're
Mhm.
just now getting into video because Google's putting a lot of money and resources to make YouTube the
Yes,
podcast
right.
player
You're
of
right.
choice. And I
Yes.
wish I would have gotten into that earlier. We're kind of behind the ball on that. The other thing is we've invested heavily in AI internally. We have our own large language model that we built, and we have an internal 100% AI driven podcast. It's not as good as people yet, but a nod, it's this close.
Understood.
And it's a threat to what we do. So, I wish I would have gotten to that a little bit earlier as well. But other than that, I think we've done a good job. We've grown organically. We've become an acquisition target during the pandemic. I did not sell. I'm still not willing to sell, although it's a compliment to be an acquisition target. I've taken no investor money. So we're in a good place. I have about 38 people that work for me. We have, like I said, 30 different podcasts that go out each week. We have 2 studios now. The brand recognition of OGGN is truly global. You can go to Rio de Janeiro, Abu Dhabi, Houma, Louisiana, and say OGGN in the oil and gas space, and everybody knows who we are. And we have a ton of respect that is well earned. We're very serious about our journalistic integrity. I'm very serious about my people. We have fun, we do good work, but we do the right thing. We don't do the easy thing. I never, never have a negative emotion with any of my people if their intent was the right thing, right? Even if they make a mistake. And after a while, that's built a culture where we do good work. And I'm very proud of that. And it's not me, it's the team. So the other thing maybe is maybe I would have tried to grow a little bit quicker. I didn't recognize the value of the podcast, quite frankly. Even after the second one, it wasn't until about the fifth podcast that we launched that I start seeing, is this a trend? Like, can you turn this into a company? And the answer obviously is yes.
But that's true for anything. It takes time before you start to believe in it. And as you said, like when you started, or you started really early, as you mentioned, like in 2011.
Yeah.
And if you go at that time, how many people knew about podcast itself?
Nobody.
Nobody, and also another thing like you have mentioned here, grow with the time. Sometimes we lose patience, and then we try to do so many fancy stuff, like to make things work. Sometimes it works. I won't say like then, but most of the time it fails, because you're losing patience and you try to do some shortcuts,
Right.
and if you do shortcuts, the quality won't come out, and sooner or later you will fall on your face. So no, that's great. Just taking this moment now to go into our rapid fire round, Mark.
Let's do it.
I'll try to make this moment a little bit lighter. No, it was getting a little bit tense here. So are you ready, Mark?
Yes.
Okay, let's start. First thing you check in the morning: news, podcast, or LinkedIn?
None of the above. The first thing I check in the morning is actually downloads. We have a dashboard for all of our podcasts.
Okay,
Second thing I check is actually news.
news. Okay, that's good. News, oil and gas, or anything?
General news. I have news feeds built up to feed me high level general news about everything that's going on in the
Understood.
world, just to get a quick snapshot of what
Makes
changed
sense.
since yesterday.
Makes sense. Okay. No, that's good. One energy company you will never forget visiting.
One energy company that what?
You will never forget visiting, like you have visited in the past, the oil
Oh,
company.
it has to be ExxonMobil by far. I think they're the best oil and gas engineering and project management company on the planet. I hate doing business with them, but they're just amazing at what they do, and I've learned so much from them over the years.
Oh, that's good. Podcasting or public speaking, what excites you more?
Damn, that's a good question. I hate to admit it, it has to be public speaking. When you actually get to interface with your audience live, which you don't get to do with the podcast, you get real feedback. So when I'm on a stage, and I do this quite often, and if people are on their cell phones, that means I've lost them. But you know what's miraculous? When you have 500 people in an auditorium and not a single person is on their cell phone because they're involved in your conversation that you're leading from stage. And there's something magical about that that's addictive in a good way.
Oh, that's great. The best advice you have ever received in sales?
Ooh, best advice would be honest about what you can and can't do. So if you have a client that has a problem that you can't help them with, don't try to sell them something that's in your portfolio. Don't do it. And
Don't do it.
actually be helpful and suggest somebody else, even if it's a competitor. If you have a competitor that can fix their problem better than you, do it. It's not going to help you in your short-term quota for that month of that quota. Long-term wise, it's going to help you in relationships and help you become a much better professional salesperson.
And I think we talked more about in one of your podcast on sales and marketing, if you remember, like
Yeah, you were on our
if you,
sales and marketing podcast. Yep.
yes, how you build that relationship with the customer. If you try to sell something which is going to fail and if you don't believe in it, don't sell. If
Right.
you believe in
Agreed.
it, first you have to believe in it, and then try to sell it to customer.
And remember, if you're a salesperson, your job is to help. It's not to sell stuff. Now, I know you're measured on a quota, and I know sales leaders are shaking their heads going, Mark, don't tell my team this. But I'm telling you, a good salesperson is a problem solver. And if you remember that, your customers eventually see you as an asset to their team and not a vendor. And that's a totally different relationship.
I can imagine. One technology you think will transform oil and gas?
Oh, AI. That's too easy a nod.
Everybody's talking about it. Actually,
Well,
this year I was in Sarawak, and every conversation had AI discussion as part of it.
I'm already seeing it. And what we do as an industry, we'll pick the upstream side of the industry, is extremely complex. To drill and produce a profitable well, there's a lot of mathematics involved, a lot of science. And it used to be our engineers spent a lot of time cleaning up Excel spreadsheets to actually get clean enough data to actually answer the question they're trying to solve. Now AI does all that for them, which means they can go back to being engineers and not clean up Excel spreadsheets. And it just has sped up the process and made us so much better. And we're in the very infancy of the AI revolution in oil and gas.
I can imagine. It's a long way to go. It's a long
Yeah.
way to If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
It'd be a theme song from Mortal Kombat. That movie probably came out in the '90s, so most of your listeners probably don't even know what I'm talking about. But that would be my theme song. I've done a lot of different things in my life, and I try to always do the right thing. I haven't always been successful, but I always try to do the right thing. And over time, it's been very beneficial to me. And so I think that would be my theme song.
That's great. What's the strangest or funniest things you have eaten on a work trip?
All right. So I'm not going to say the name of the company. It's a big company everybody would know of. I was given a tour of a rig in Asia Pacific. And because I was from the US and I was American, the cooks on the rig were trying to be nice and cook some American food. And so they made pizza. However, instead of tomato sauce, it was a fruit puree. Instead of beef or chicken, it was goat. Now, the goat was good, let me tell you. And instead of the typical vegetables we have, onions and jalapenos and tomatoes, it was peas, was the vegetables that they had on there. And then the cheese was a fermented cheese, which has a totally different flavor than the cheese we're used to here in Europe. So it looked like an American pizza, but when you took your first bite, it didn't taste anything like it. But I will give them credit. They were being nice and they were trying to make American food that they had never made before with the ingredients they had on the rig. But that was a strange one.
At least they tried.
Yeah, they tried.
They tried. And also for our listeners, is a new recipe now. If you want to try, you can try by yourself and let us know how it tastes. No, that's great. No, you did really good, Mark. And and I was not expecting anything less from you on this rapid fire round. No, that's great. Like many things to come to know from your side. But let's continue the theme of understanding about this industry. We have discussed about many things, like how you have started your journey, like your education, like you work across different companies. Then we talked about how this industry is transforming. But you have to summarize everything as one key takeaway for our listeners. What would be that be?
One key takeaway is change is inevitable. Um, don't change for change's sake, but understand and try to look a little bit ahead. You can, if you do it enough, you can figure out where things are going to end up. Strategic thinking is basically taking the data you have now and trying to predict what's going to happen in the short-term future. And we all have the ability to do that.
Yeah.
And if you do that, you can help guide your career. You can help guide your personal relationships. And it's even good for your own mental and physical health. I mean, all of us probably could spend a little bit more time working out, probably spend a little bit more time in nature. And in order to do that in our busy world, you have to plan for it. It has to be in your calendar. So if you don't spend that time looking ahead, you're not going to get there. And you don't have unlimited days on this planet. You have a limited time here. So make the best use of it. And like I said, just thinking ahead a little bit will help improve the quality of not only your life, but those around you.
That's perfect. That's perfect, Mark. And last not the least, we talked about multiple biases, but what one bias that exists in the industry, or how can we overcome that challenge?
Let's be honest here. Sometimes having a bias disappear in our industry means that a certain segment of our workforce needs to exit. Usually that's retirement. Sometimes it just takes senior leaders that have a certain way of thinking. They just need to leave. You can't coach that out of people. I've tried it. You can't train it. Now, the other side of it is sometimes you can coach people once they see the benefits of thinking of things a different way. Human nature is that we like our routines. We don't like to change. And you got to be aware of that. But in order to remove biases, we need education, and then unfortunately, sometimes we just need a change of the guard.
Oh, that's amazing. So what you are saying, like maybe new thought process that helps with that change. Mm.
Of course. Yeah,
Yeah.
being able to see things in a different way. I'll give you a perfect example. One of our past sponsors is a company called Bulwark. They make FR, so protective clothing. They recently won a large bid from one of the super majors, not because they were cheaper, but because they had more FR clothing that were cut for women. In order for FR clothing or flame resistant clothing to work, it has to fit your body. If it doesn't
Yes.
fit your body and you have a flash flower, you'll get burned. And
It's a
obviously,
safety hazard. Yes. Like if
women's
it's
bodies are shaped differently than men's
yes,
bodies.
yes.
So there's a perfect example of how a change in bias is actually positive for the industry, and companies will respond to that by making, in this case, specific FR for women, where it used to be we stuck women in men's FRs, and it was
Yeah.
very dangerous to them. And so there's a simple thing that doesn't, on the surface, doesn't look big, but it tells a huge story of how many more women are in the field that need FRs, that this company's now winning global bids because they
Yes.
have a bigger selection of FR clothing for women. That tells a whole beautiful story in itself.
That's a beautiful story, like where the industry was, like I will say
Yeah.
5, 6 decades ago, and now where we are heading towards. It's more inclusive industry. It's very diverse. As you mentioned about you worked in Gulf of Mexico to Middle East to Asia, so it's very diverse, and I think there is an opportunity for everyone to make a big in this industry, and that's the message we want to give here. So if you are looking to be part of this industry, it's never late, and you can be part of it.
And we want you here. I promise you, no matter what you do, we have a place for you. If you're an 18-year-old kid and your friends and your family are making fun of you because you're obsessed with drones and you're a drone geek, BP's number two position they can't hire enough of is drone pilots. You can make $180,000 a year flying a drone for BP. So anything that you do, anything you want to do, bring it to the industry. We want you. Come join us.
That's excellent, excellent, Mark. So now I wish we had more time, but everything has to stop. So before I will sign off today, anything to add here?
Love the journey that you're on. And we talked about this before we turned the microphones on. I've helped you start your journey. All of your success is because your efforts, not me. But now you've helped other people start their journey, and those people help other people start their journey. So just by helping one person just a little bit, there's a domino effect, and it helps make the world a better place. And so thank you for having the courage to start your own podcast. And thank you for helping others do the same.
And you are inspiration behind my journey. And as you said, like I'm trying to do the same for other people. So we will that journey will continue, and more people will be part of this industry, and we will keep working to spread positivity about this industry. So
Love it.
with that, I will sign off today. Keep listening. Oil and Gas Breaking By Show. Thank you.